Story 1. Great in some ways, but absolutely terrible in others. It certainly has the ability to negatively impact the young. Story 2. I am frustrated that I haven't clicked anything to add artificial intelligence, but my Google searches now include it. I asked how to disable it, and artificial intelligence uses terms that don't exist on my phone. Yes, I have a settings tab, but down the rabbit hole, artificial intelligence suggests disabling it, yet there is no option for that. Story 3. I'm generally all for it. I use artificial intelligence and my smartphone. If you tried to take away my laptop, I would probably break your arm. But it's important to be aware of the trade-offs that come with technology. For example, social media has many benefits, but it can also lead to the isolation of individuals. Video games are enjoyable, but they can become addictive, causing people to stay at home and isolate themselves in pursuit of constant gratification. Smartphones are helpful, but they can also create an isolation bubble where you disengage from the world around you. In other words, technology can enrich and impoverish your life simultaneously. An interesting conversation occurred with my children at dinner a few weeks ago about how rare social gatherings have become. Previously, those events were how people met others, formed friendships, and explored new experiences. Now, they are much less frequent. Due to the allure of entertainment, it's often easier to stay at home and passively consume content, opting for a substitute life instead of living your own. I believe this has contributed to a loneliness epidemic. It is evident everywhere, including on social media platforms. Individuals without friends, without companionship, and lacking basic conversational skills often wake up feeling existentially discontent, wondering where the joy in life is gone. To me, that's the problem with technology when not used appropriately. Its enticing promise can lead you to abandon other meaningful pursuits if you're not cautious. Story 4. I dislike it. In my day, we would yodel to communicate and send our thank you cards by carrier pigeon. Carrier condors were used for large packages. Please stay off my lawn. Story 5. I remember paying bills in person. Sometimes, I would be hungover on a Saturday when the post office closed early at 1 p.m., standing in line for what felt like forever, or completing tax returns manually. I really appreciate new technology. Story 6. I'm in my late 50s and I love new technology, but there are a few things I've figured out. It needs to have some longevity. I'm no longer an early adopter because I have a garage full of obsolete technology that sounded wonderful when it was introduced, such as a mini disc player, a digital audio tape player, a Kodak disc camera, and laser discs. I still have all my game consoles and games back to the Atari 2600. However, they all lasted a while except for the Nintendo Virtual Boy and Sega 32X, so I don't count them as lacking longevity. It needs to enhance my life somehow. My microwave has dozens of settings, but I generally use maybe 2 to 3 of them. When I was younger, I would get the technology with the most features but realized I was spending money on things I wasn't using. These days, I evaluate both usefulness and longevity. It was satisfying when I stayed away from the Blu-ray and HD DVD competition until the dust settled with Blu-ray. My Sony Betamax player was vindicated. Story 7. My father has always been a technology enthusiast and an early adopter. There are 2 pieces of technology he absolutely dislikes. 1. Artificial intelligence. 2. Technology-enabled washers and dryers. He even went out of his way to buy a Speed Queen washer and dryer to avoid those issues. Story 8. Plot twist. Have you seen how millennials and Generation Z are acting with artificial intelligence? It reminds me of how baby boomers were with computers, the internet, smartphones, and TikTok. Story 9. I was a kid in an era where you had to wait for the neighbors to get off the party line before you could make a call. Today, I transfer money by phone, buy stocks by phone, and meet people through my phone. I love technology. Story 10. I am middle-aged, and I continue to make an effort to learn about new technology, new music, and new media. This does not mean I will enjoy all of it, but typically I find myself pleasantly surprised. Hopefully, I never stop that. Story 11. My career is in new technology and has been for the last 25 years. I just hired my first direct report and I'll be teaching her new technology she has not been exposed to in school. Story 12. We have been inventing much of it. We were fortunate to be early adopters and to observe its development to the current stage. The older individuals who have issues with technology, if there are any, are mostly over 80 at this point. Although some may associate people in their 60s with difficulties in using computers, it is important to revise that perception. I was in my 20s during the 1990s when the internet and home personal computers became widespread. I have been using computers at work since the early 1980s. Remember that we were not born old, and we had computer programming courses in public schools in the 1970s. We were the ones who set up video cassette recorders for our grandparents and assisted our parents in getting online. Most of us had tedious clerical jobs at one point that have now been automated by technology, and we were pleased to see that, allowing us to apply our mental capacities to other pursuits. Story 13. Whenever I need help with something technology-related, I ask my son-in-law, who is a software engineer, for assistance and instructions. He is knowledgeable and always willing to help. I'm doing well. The only thing that holds me back is the cost of some technology and the lack of infrastructure in my very old house, as well as the expense of upgrading. Story 14. Amazing facilitator for poor human behavior. The discussion is there. I work in studio and broadcast audio, and I remember making last-minute, painstaking edits of linear media, doing it quickly to catch the FedEx driver for the last pickup of the night for next-day delivery. Now, I receive a near-instant message on my smartphone, make the change in a couple of minutes, and send a new file over various communication methods. The client receives it, we're finished in just a few stress-free minutes, and I didn't even have to leave the house. I still think that's pretty impressive. Story 15. Brother, I'm just a bit over 30, and I graduated in information technology. I find Google Lens real-time translation to be remarkable and impressive technology. Story 16. I appreciate the labor-saving conveniences. I recently acquired an induction stove, which I prefer over any other stove I've used. However, I have mixed feelings about some new technology. A smartphone is impressive. I view it as a high-tech multi-tool with features like a clock, camera, flashlight, and media player all combined into one device. Nonetheless, I believe it has negatively impacted many young people who have become too dependent on it. Story 17. I feel like I was just hanging around on the planet waiting for them to invent this. I love it. I am an early adopter and a 71-year-old lesbian. Story 18. I have no opinion on it. If it works, that's great. If it does not work, I have no room in my life for it. Young people may not remember, but when the iPhone came out, it offered many innovative features except for making phone calls. It did not function well as a phone. Story 19. I still use my laptop much more than my iPhone. It is better for long emails, spreadsheets, photo editing, and researching products. I mostly use my phone for calls, brief texts, and photos, as well as useful apps for shopping and travel. I cannot imagine life without the internet. I write 1 or 2 checks per year and rarely go to the bank. I use the internet for family history, finance, travel planning and reservations, shopping, news, weather, and social media. Story 20. Answering your question feels more rewarding than talking to my neighbor because I can pretend this is a social interaction, but it isn't. I am willing to exchange easy and quick for something more substantial. Story 21. Love and hate. Many things that were once considered science fiction have come to fruition. I enjoy seeing innovations such as smartwatches, electric cars, and rapid advancements in medical technology. However, I dislike what social media has done to youth and society in general. I find it concerning to see young people using electric scooters rather than engaging in physical exercise. There is a noticeable decline in social skills as they remain engrossed in their phones. Recently, artificial intelligence has become more alarming than exciting for me. We are advancing too quickly, and I fear the consequences may be permanently damaging to humanity. Story 22. In general, I find it very interesting but not always easy. There is an irony in that, although I didn't end up in the field, I actually worked with some early computers, paper tape, punch cards, and similar technologies. Does anyone remember the PDP-8? But all that is of no use to me at all now. A lot of new technology is designed for young people in a way they may not realize. Older fingers do not register on touch screens the same way for some reason, and one's fingers may feel clumsy. A lot of new technology fills me with wonder, especially what can now be accomplished in medicine and genetics. I am not pleased about some of the impacts of new technology, but in most cases, it would have been hard to avoid the downsides. Mobile phones are incredibly useful, yet they have robbed teenagers of independence and created expectations of constant availability. I miss the freedom of the old days when no one was tracing your old posts or watching you on surveillance cameras. However, can I complain when, as a historian, I can now access information from home that would have previously required a trip to another country? By the way, it is not true that everything is online, however, quite a bit is. Different decisions could have been made regarding some technology at an early stage, but once a pattern is established, it is difficult to change. For a parallel in earlier history, consider how the automotive industry in the United States sabotaged alternatives and manipulated discourse, such as the creation of the term jaywalker, which framed normal pedestrians as intruders in spaces dominated by automobiles. The internet might have developed differently, but it is a bit late now. Story 23. I once said that I prefer a wired internet connection and wired recharging over wireless and got called a Luddite. Sure, new technology is fun, but I enjoy making some things by hand. Why bother wiring up speakers, a radio, and an antenna in my workshop if I can just use a Bluetooth speaker and a phone? Why check for chicken eggs daily if I can use an incubator with automated humidity and heat control? However, when it comes to chopping firewood, I prefer an axe over a chopping machine. Story 24. I love it for the most part. I don't like smartphones. Why use something slow and small? I have two 28-inch monitors and four 24-inch monitors. I have a gamer's chair, a programmable mouse, and a keyboard. People complain about social media, but at 58, I find Facebook nice. All those people meant a great deal to me at some time in my life. They have no reason to email that their child got a baseball scholarship to college, but it makes me happy when I see things like that. Story 25. I grew up with it and keep up with it. I try to help people older than me do the same. I wish it didn't need to be ever-present or used for everything. I'm still frustrated at restaurants and bars where I have to use a QR code just to see a menu or to be served. If you take my money directly or in person, do you want your tip the same way? Then you should be taking my order when I give it to you, person to person. I have questions and you have answers. Let's not make this take any longer or be any more complicated than it needs to be. Story 26. Although I prefer my letters to be transported by stagecoaches, I think it is quite interesting that young people use technology for communication. I mean, why not? Story 27. I turn 58 tomorrow. I enjoy coding and helping implement artificial intelligence at my company. New technology is exciting to me. If you do not follow technology, you are likely to feel lost. Story 28. It should be great, but it is disappointing. People around 35 to 40 remember how much better it was when it was new and have witnessed its decline in real time. Younger individuals only know it as it is and do not appreciate the context. Story 29. We have an ongoing battle with each other. I'm driving a 2010 RAV4 with no infotainment, no cameras, and no touchscreen. Just power steering and power windows. That suits me just fine. My approach is that more computers mean more things that can go wrong. Story 30. I have no idea what the cutoff age for old is. To me, new technology is a mixed bag of outstanding advancements like mRNA-based vaccines and idiotic ideas such as removing physical inputs and displays in cars. Story 31. I have been retired for several years. Technology is great. I use ChatGPT and DeepSeek daily to create models for my hobbies. If I need to find information, DuckDuckGo is my go-to search engine. There is no point in being a Luddite. The technology is available, and if it makes my life easier, I will use it. That said, there are a few things I prefer not to use: modern cars with touchscreens. I detest them to the nth degree. I prefer knobs. It just feels right to me. Another issue I have is with automatic gearboxes. I dislike them. I know they have improved significantly over the years, but I still prefer manual transmissions. As for cats, I love them. Story 32. As someone else mentioned, it's a double-edged sword. I only began paying bills online when COVID hit. I still use the United States Postal Service to send real cards and the occasional letter. Email is fine but impersonal. I can research much more conveniently than I did in my youth. No more musty encyclopedias and dusty library stacks. I absolutely despise making and receiving calls on a cell phone. God forbid I brace it between my ear and shoulder, as I do with my old-fashioned cordless landline. On the cell phone, my chin regularly hits the disconnect button. I do not want a lawyer, doctor, or contractor calling my cell phone when I'm driving or at a store. Although I carry it when walking my dog, I don't want to talk and walk. The walk is the priority. Having to keep up with the latest improvements is costly. From VHS to disc, DVD to Blu-ray, vinyl to 8-track to cassette to CD to iPod, and on and on. Tube televisions to flat screens to streaming. My attic is crammed with those remnants. The personal disconnect is a travesty. Texting the person sitting 3 feet away, getting so lost in a game that the world disappears. That's technology. Story 33. 1. Define old. 2. I appreciate it all. The more, the better. I had to go to the library while I was at the university. It took me a day to get the reference I needed. Then I sent that reference to a different university 2 countries away. They sent me a single sheet of paper from the reference. It took almost 3 weeks to reach me. I still failed the exam. It cost me time, money, and stress. The only positive aspect is that I met my ex-wife during that time. Nobody needs to go through that nowadays. Story 34. I may not be old, but as a 1990s baby, the period from the 1990s to 2010 was the peak era to be a child, and I will never hear otherwise. In my opinion, social media and the advancement of the internet ruined everything that followed. Story 35. I embrace it and have little patience with people of my generation who lag behind. The world moves on. Story 36. I love new technology. What I can't stand is when it changes what I was happy with. Microsoft is the main culprit. I'm still annoyed at the introduction of ribbons in Microsoft Office and the constantly changing Windows desktop. I've been using Classic Shell to get my start menu back. Additionally, there is the ongoing battle against privacy loss and intrusive ads. I am 46 years old. Story 37. It can do a lot, but if you expect it to do too much, you might be disappointed. My boss is 10 years younger than I am and has no qualifications or experience in the field. He is trying to improve with artificial intelligence. Perhaps in 5 or 10 years, but not yet. That is not my concern. However, I enjoy critically examining the artificial intelligence tools we are recommended to use. It is bound to make mistakes. Story 38. I'm middle-aged, in my mid-40s, which feels ancient on platforms like Reddit. Here is the thing to remember about older adults and technology. It's not that we don't want to learn new things. It's a combination of a few factors. 1. When learning something new, we often have to unlearn the old methods. Both the old and new methods often have no relation to what you are trying to accomplish, so there's very little logic involved. None of this happens all at once. It is a gradual relearning process of dozens, if not hundreds, of concepts constantly. I know I'm supposed to like Discord, but I really dislike it. The controls are different from every other messaging service I've ever used. The menu options for setting up a headset are completely different from what I do for every other application. When issues arise, my previous knowledge of similar programs does not help. To my perspective, it provides a worse experience with a less intuitive interface than what I previously used. And I can already hear young people saying, "It's super easy. Just do this, that, and the other." Yes, but you've been doing this, that, and the other your entire life. I've been doing something else for 20 years. Now, I have to adapt to these new methods, but there's no guide to tell me that one action is not the same as another. There are no instructions clarifying, "You used to do it this way, now do it this way." There is no logical reason why you right-click in the old system but hit a specific key in the new system. Both actions are arbitrary, defined by programmers, so there's no logic to follow. Is unlearning and then learning difficult? No, but multiply that by dozens of applications every single month, and after a while, you may not feel like putting in the effort to learn an entirely new system that is objectively less suited to your needs. I don't need most of the features that Discord claims are better. I'm forced to use it because everyone else does. The important thing to remember is that if you are a young person, this will happen to you too, and anyone claiming otherwise is not being truthful. Story 39. I am 83 years old and have been involved with technology my entire adult life. I was a beta tester for Windows and was very engaged with IBM's OS/2 operating system. I also beta tested for Microsoft and Windows. My career was entirely in technology, starting as a key punch operator and retiring as an expert in programming, networking, and managing both mainframes and desktops. I have never lost interest in technology and still assist many friends while keeping up with various aspects, though I am not as familiar with smartphones. Story 40. When you're old, you get to choose which new technologies you want to use. I love smartphones, email, texting, and Google Earth. I never use Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Story 41. I am in my 70s. I love most aspects of technology. Who would have thought we could do any of what we can do these days? Story 42. It is a great tool that is often misused. Children as young as 3 are babysat with screen time, teens use it to bully, and people take photos everywhere for everything, which can be very annoying. On the positive side, it allows us to stay informed on current issues and perform many beneficial activities online, such as education, telehealth, and long-distance communication. Story 43. It depends on the item. Some are good, such as smart TVs and cell phones, while others, like washers and dryers from 2022, are not. Story 44. Well, I would rather fill out the forms using a writing instrument than use an iPad at the dentist's or doctor's office to do the same thing. Other than artificial intelligence fake content, I'm fine with all of it. Vinyl sounds better than any digital music every time. Story 45. 74-year-old retired aerospace engineer. I use what I like. Much of it frustrates me when people assume that new technology is suitable for home use. The microwave with Wi-Fi capability has a clock that loses a minute each month. The load-balancing washing machine works well, but its water level sensor has been faulty since day one. Story 46. What new technology are you referring to? I am 57 years old and retired, but I train artificial intelligence large language models on the side. There is no technology that feels new to me at the moment. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.